The courtroom was icy, the kind of cold that seeped into your bones and made you shiver, even when the situation was already tense enough. The judge's gavel had barely fallen when my soon-to-be ex-wife, Jessica, leaned back in her chair, a smug smirk plastered across her face. She crossed her legs with exaggerated confidence, her designer red-bottom heels tapping lightly against the polished floor. "Your Honor," she purred, brushing a perfectly manicured nail against her cheek. "Let's be honest here. My husband," she turned her gaze toward me, her eyes filled with contempt, "is like a workhorse, reliable, predictable, and very, very easy to ride." The courtroom erupted in murmurs, a few gasps, and even a muffled chuckle from her lawyer. The judge barely raised an eyebrow before banging his gavel to restore order. I clenched my jaw but didn't react, not yet. She was putting on a show, and I wasn't about to give her the satisfaction of seeing me lose my temper. The divorce had been her idea, of course. After 8 years of marriage, she had decided I was no longer enough for her, no longer exciting, no longer the man she thought she deserved. But instead of leaving with dignity, she had dragged me into this courtroom, determined to humiliate me on her way out. She had already taken the house, the one I had built with my own hands. She had fought tooth and nail for half of my business, even though she had contributed nothing to it. And now, in this final hearing, she was still twisting the knife. Her new boyfriend, a polished corporate lawyer, sat in the back row, watching with detached amusement. He was everything she had convinced herself she wanted: confident, successful, and utterly devoid of loyalty. She hadn't even bothered to be discreet about their affair. I had caught them months ago in our own bed, wrapped in sheets I had paid for. But I wasn't going to crumble. What she didn't know was that this trial wasn't the final battle, it was just the setup. Her lawyer, a smug man in an expensive suit, stood and adjusted his tie. "Your Honor, my client merely wishes to express her concerns regarding Mr. Hayes' ability to provide alimony in the long term. She made significant lifestyle sacrifices while married to him and deserves fair compensation for those years." Sacrifices. That was rich. Judge Reynolds peered over his glasses at me. "Mr. Hayes, do you have a response?" I took a slow breath, gripping the edge of the table. This was the moment. Slowly, deliberately, I reached up and unbuttoned my dress shirt. The courtroom went silent. Even the judge tilted his head, clearly curious about what I was doing. I didn't rush. I wanted every second to stretch. One by one, I undid the buttons, then shrugged off the shirt completely. That's when the gasps started. Even Jessica's smirk vanished. Her boyfriend's amused expression turned to unease. Because standing there, in the cold air of the courtroom, I was unrecognizable from the man Jessica had been mocking. The last time she had really looked at me, I had been soft, comfortable. A man who had spent too many years working, providing, and sacrificing, but not taking care of myself. I had been easy to ignore, easy to cheat on. But the man standing before them now was broad, powerful, and completely transformed. I had spent months preparing for this. Hours at the gym, training relentlessly, pushing my body until the pain became a companion. The weight I had once carried in stress and exhaustion had been replaced with lean, disciplined muscle. Scars lined my torso, the kind you don't get from an easy life. And most importantly, right over my heart, I had gotten a tattoo. A workhorse. Breaking free of its chains, the symbolism wasn't lost on anyone, especially not Jessica. She was staring, her eyes wide, her mouth slightly open. Her lawyer recovered quickly. "Your Honor, I fail to see how this is relevant to—" I cut him off, my voice calm, steady, but cold as steel. "You want to talk about sacrifices? For 8 years I gave everything to this marriage. I worked overtime so she could quit her job and find herself. I paid for her shopping sprees, her fancy vacations, her cosmetic procedures. I even put her name on my business, thinking we were a team. I shifted my gaze back to Jessica, watching the color drain from her face. And how did she repay me? I gestured toward the man in the back row. With him. The courtroom erupted in murmurs again. Her lawyer tried to object, but Judge Reynolds held up a hand. Let him speak. I nodded in appreciation before continuing. You called me a workhorse, huh? My lips curled into a slow, deliberate smirk. That's funny, because this workhorse is about to run right over you. Her expression twisted, panic flickering in her eyes. I reached down, grabbing a thick manila envelope from my chair. It slammed onto the table with a loud thud. Inside this file, I said, my voice ringing clearly, are documents proving you've been committing financial fraud, hiding money, claiming expenses from my business that had nothing to do with you. Her mouth opened, then shut, then opened again. And because of that, I continued, I'm not only taking your alimony request off the table, I'm suing you for damages. The courtroom exploded into whispers. Her lawyer scrambled to flip through his notes, while Jessica sat frozen, her perfectly rehearsed confidence shattered. For the first time in months, I saw something new in her eyes. Not arrogance, not amusement, but fear, and we weren't even done yet. The fallout. The judge took a deep breath. Given the serious nature of these claims, I will need to review all financial documents and evidence before making any rulings. Until then, all assets remain frozen. Jessica's head snapped toward him in horror. Frozen, she repeated, her voice cracking. Yes, Judge Reynolds said flatly. Which means you cannot access your bank accounts, your business shares, or any joint assets until this case is concluded. Her hands were shaking now. She turned to her lawyer. Do something, she hissed. He just rubbed his temples, looking utterly defeated. Meanwhile, I sat back down, perfectly calm, perfectly composed, and watched the reality of her situation finally settle in. She had been planning to walk away wealthy and victorious. Instead, she had just been cut off completely. And her boyfriend? He was already checking his watch, looking like he wanted to be anywhere but here. I glanced at him again, smirking slightly. He wouldn't last. She was about to learn just how quickly men like him run when the money dries up. But that was a problem for her to deal with, because for the first time in a long, long time, I had already won. The aftermath a week later, I got a text from an unknown number. I opened it. Jessica, I made a mistake. Please, I just want to talk. We can fix this. I laughed. Not a bitter laugh, not an angry laugh, but a free laugh. Then, without hesitation, I deleted her message. I didn't need to respond. I had already said everything I needed to say. The moment I deleted Jessica's message, something shifted inside me. For the first time in months, no, years, I felt light, unburdened, free. The woman who had once held every part of my life in her grip was nothing to me now, just a name in a court file, a lesson in betrayal. And yet, her downfall wasn't over. Because while I had walked away victorious, she still had everything to lose. Public humiliation. The next few weeks were a storm for Jessica. First came the financial audit. The court launched a full investigation into her fraudulent transactions. And as expected, the evidence was undeniable. She had stolen money from our business, funneled funds into secret accounts, and committed outright embezzlement. She wasn't just losing alimony. She was facing potential criminal charges. And then came the breakup. I had already known Brooks was going to cut and run, but even I underestimated how fast he would throw her under the bus. Just 3 days after the hearing, his law firm publicly distanced itself from him. His boss made a statement that the firm had zero tolerance for unethical behavior, and Brooks resigned before they could fire him. And Jessica? She found herself alone, completely and utterly alone. No boyfriend, no money, and a ruined reputation. Jessica's final plea, I expected one last desperate attempt from her, and sure enough, One evening, as I was finishing my workout at home, she showed up. I heard the knock at the door, steady but hesitant. I considered ignoring it, but then I thought, why not enjoy this? I opened the door, and there she stood. Jessica Hayes, once my wife, now just a shell of the woman she used to be. She was still trying to look put together, but there was a desperation in her eyes. Her makeup was too perfect, as if she was trying to mask how miserable she was. Her expensive jewelry was gone, most likely pawned to survive. When she spoke, her voice was softer than I had ever heard it before. "Hey," she said, forcing a small smile. "Can we talk?" I leaned against the doorframe, crossing my arms. "What is there to talk about?" I asked, my voice calm, unreadable. She shifted on her feet, letting out a nervous laugh. "Look, I know things got messy. I know we had our differences, but..." I just stared at her, waiting. "I miss you," she finally said. I raised an eyebrow. "Do you?" She swallowed hard. Yeah. I mean, we had so many good years. And I made a mistake. I let things get out of control. I didn't respond. I just let the silence stretch between us. Jessica's face twisted slightly, and the act slipped. Her voice turned sharper. "Damn it, can't you just stop being so smug for 5 seconds? I'm trying here." I chuckled. There she was. The real Jessica. The one who had tried to tear me down in court. The one who had mocked me for being loyal, for being easy to ride. Now she wanted me back. I tilted my head slightly. "You don't miss me," I said plainly. "You miss the life I gave you." Her lips parted slightly, like she wanted to protest, but she didn't, because she knew it was true. "I have nothing left," she admitted, her voice breaking. "No money, no one to turn to. I just need a little help. Just until I get back on my feet." I almost laughed at the audacity, but I didn't give her the reaction she wanted. Instead, I reached into my pocket, pulled out my wallet, and handed her a $1 bill. She stared at it. "What the hell is this?" she snapped. I smiled. "Consider it my last act of generosity." Her face flushed red with humiliation. "You son of a..." I shut the door in her face. And that was the last time I ever saw Jessica Hayes. Epilogue. Dear readers, sometimes life gives you a chance to rewrite your story. Jessica thought she could break me, but in the end, she only made me stronger. I walked away from that courtroom not as a victim, but as a victor. And while her life crumbled, mine was just beginning. If you enjoyed this story of betrayal, redemption, and ultimate victory, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more tales of resilience and triumph. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. What would you have done in my shoes?